ज्ञानस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सगणललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरतुषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So, welcome everyone. I think all these Zoom meetings have now become normal, and it seems that even after whenever the Corona pandemic ends, still many of us may still like to continue this. Not only this kind of program, but so many programs on Zoom, because it saves a lot of time traveling here, there, going. Only Prashadam is not there, but otherwise, at least you are able to sit together and discuss something. Okay, so let's continue with our discussion on Gita. So, yeah, so we have a very, the topic for today is a self-application topic, and it's titled as Subjective and Subjective Reality. Right, so objective reality, simple thing means, objective reality simply stated means things that happen in the world and nature on which by and large we have no control. Right, so many things are happening around in the world, in nature, prakriti especially. It is objective. That means there is no consciousness in objective reality. That's how it is defined. So things are happening as per nature's need and desires. Subjective reality is how we look at things, and today we will try to discuss how the entire Gita, the focus is to fine tune our own subjective reality. That means to fine tune our own vision of the world, so that no matter what is happening around us, one still tunes himself to that. And the cornerstone of subjective reality is the Nishkama Karma Yoga, which the Bhagavad Gita speaks about. Because in Nishkama Karma Yoga, one is supposed to do one's activities with this Nishkama Bhavana, where one is not too much concerned or too much focused primarily on the happiness, distress that comes out of whatever we are doing. And because Prakriti will keep throwing up various situations, and it's very difficult for us to say that we want to have things go our way. And this is the basic theme that we will be discussing today. So there are several verses and several important things from Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so essentially speaking, there are actually only two topics that we are going to do today, but they will take a lot of discussion. The first is objective and subjective reality, and the second theme for today's discussion is collective growth versus individual growth. And both these topics are actually connected, So this is all that we are going to see today in the next 1 hour. Okay, so let's start off. The first slide essentially in our today's discussion is about reality, objective and subjective. So what is objective reality? Objective reality, please note, is fact-centric. It is reductionist. And it doesn't care for our feelings. So there are things that will be happening in Prakriti which are not caring for anybody's feelings or anything. So if you recall, maybe 10 years back when we used to have Radhanath Maharaj's Vyas Puja in Mumbai, I think it was somewhere in November once a Vyas Puja ceremony was kept. Maybe it was November 15th or something. And generally in November it doesn't rain, but somehow on that particular day it rained, like anything. And in Mumbai we all know that when it rains, it really rains. And the entire event had to be called off actually. So there were so many thousands of people who had come for the Vyas Puja event, if you remember. Many of us were also there perhaps. This was maybe 8-9 years ago. Many of us were there. So many thousands of devotees had come from all over. Maybe some had come from outside the country. But still it rained. We didn't want that rain that day. And we never expected it would come. But that was Prakriti's need, to shower rain in Mumbai in the month of November. Correct. And maybe another year we had one Sambhavami Yuge Yuge drama also in Pune. So that time also a similar thing happened. It rained on a November evening when it generally doesn't. But that's how Prakriti is. It's very fact-centric. It doesn't care for, what our plans may have been. So we may have had our own plan, but it will happen. The subjective perspective is, the subjective reality means how I look at the situations and happenings around me. Okay. So that's subjective perspective. That means how I am going to look at Prakriti's events. And as we will be discussing today, the Gita speaks about how it is necessary to bring a harmony between these two. So yogi, as per Bhagavad Gita, is one who has a harmony between the objective happenings in the world and his own subjective feelings towards it. So when the harmony is there, he is composed and he is happy. But when the harmony is not there, then there is too much disturbance. So basically a yogi, or one who practices Nishkama Karma Yoga as per Bhagavad Gita, that person, he will never question. He doesn't question Prakriti's acts. So why did it happen like that? No, that questioning is not there actually. One just accepts and one adjusts one's own feelings in line with that. So if you see the subjective perspective, Krishna speaks about this in several places. So one place, for example, Krishna uses the word seer, drishtva, in several places in Bhagavad Gita. For example, if you see 2nd chapter, 16th verse, Krishna says, Nasate vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sataha ubhayor api drishtontastu anyos tattva darshibihi. He says, seers of the truth have concluded that of the existence, there is no cessation. So basically, the idea is the seer, the drishtva who is there, the subjective person, the subjective means the individual who looks at situations personally, he doesn't actually pray to change objective reality. Okay, so he understands that objective reality is unchangeable. Correct. So I'm just giving an example. If you hear of a farmer, so many of our devotees who have done some study on this particular theme, they say that in traditional India, the way farming would happen was that farmers would see or try to predict the amount of rain that would happen in the month of June, July, using their own ways of how birds are behaving in January, February, and so on. So there are some very traditional ways by looking at birds or looking at insects and, by looking at Prakriti, the farmers could get an idea from traditional perspective about whether it would rain or no in the month of June, July. And if in a particular year rain was going to be less, then they would plan their crops accordingly. Correct. So this is what it means by saying that your subjective reality should be in line with objective reality. So the objective reality is the rain. So every year rain is not going to be the same amount. So some days there will be abundant rain. Some years there will be less rain. Some years there will be moderate rain. But if somebody doesn't adjust to that and thinks that every time I should have cash crops, or I should have crops which like sugar cane or something which need a lot of water always, then it will not happen. Then you are not in line with the objective reality, and then you end up committing suicide, etc. So just like you hear of farmer suicides in India. So basically this is what it means. So actually I personally had a lot of kind of experience of this, because at least at some point I was doing some research work on rainfall predictions, and at that time I came across so many papers written by many people that spoke about how in traditional communities people would predict rainfall, you by looking at birds and by looking at insects. So there is a lot of literature also in that. So right, so what we're talking of is an example where you adjust your subjective reality as per objective reality, because objective reality, as I said, is unchangeable, but subjective reality gives the privilege to those who have a better perspective to go beyond how the objective reality functions. It gives that privilege to the person who is ready to go beyond it and look. So but if you pray to change objective reality, then you are actually wasting your time. So if you ask why Krishna did this, that, then you are trying to fight objective reality. So I mean, again, coming back to this coronavirus thing, so again, it's a simple thing. It is Prakriti's need. So like many people say, that many astrologers have also said that in 2020 there is the same griha dosha as it was there in 1920. And many of us must have read that in 1920 also there was a similar kind of pandemic where millions of people got affected, many lakhs of people died or whatever. So the point is, it had to come, right? So adjusting ourselves, or tuning ourselves in accordance with the objective reality, basically means that one lives in the present and doesn't simply live in a world of imagination, right? Our present, but in most of our cases, what happens is our present is not based on alertness, but people are absorbed in pleasure. So hence we deny objective reality, and we build our own idea of what the reality should be, and then there is a gap, and when the gap is there, there is a tension, there is a misery. So just like one devotee was asking me after the class last time a question about how, about just like this coronavirus was there, and our Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Now again, if you see carefully, Maharaj, if you see, he led a 75-year-old life. I mean, Maharaj was almost 75 years when he passed away. And in his life, there were so many wonderful things that happened. If you see carefully, how Krishna and Prakriti had given him so many wonderful facilities throughout his life in terms of his ability to contribute. And something like this is going to happen in everybody's life. So that's an objective reality. Actually, objective reality means this material world is made in a way that at some point of time, for someone in one's lifetime, some big crisis will come, right? So when a 75-year-old personality who has had so much of blessings in his life, he suffers a crisis like that, then we should not question that objective reality as to why it happened, right? So this is for those who feel like that. So just like astrology also, if you see, one of the most important dimensions that astrology talks about is called drishtva. Drishtva means how you see the situation. For example, astrology will simply tell you that if you go ahead on this road, there is a ditch that will come. So the ditch is the objective reality. The ditch is there. You can't do anything about it. But the question is how you are going to face that ditch. That is your subjective reality. That is your perspective. That is drishtva. That is the seer of Bhagavad Gita. How you see that ditch which is coming. Correct? And when we have this understanding, then we are quite composed, and also then our faith also is kind of very rational. So last time after the class, one devotee had asked me that why is it that someone like Bhakti Charu Maharaj got this coronavirus and not some atheist like Richard Dawkins. So I try to tell him that, well, see, Prakriti is very objective, right? So it has coronavirus, and if Richard Dawkins is going to just sit in one place and he's not going to go around anywhere or something, then he may just not get it. So it is not that just because he's an atheist, Prakriti will go to his house and kind of give it to him. The point is, generally it doesn't happen like that. Correct. So that's how Prakriti is very objective in its functioning, right? It doesn't care for anything in terms of who is atheist, who is exalted. It doesn't see that. Correct. So just to give one more example, so if you see on the right side, I have put a picture of sunrise. This is actually the picture of sunrise, photo of sunrise in Kanyakumari. So this was in one yatra. I think it was sometime in 1990s. We had gone on a yatra to South India with Maharaj. I think it was 1995. Maharaj had taken a yatra to Kanyakumari. So those days, only about 250 devotees were there in the yatra. And one of the most important things to see in Kanyakumari is the sunrise, because it's very beautiful. Because the sun comes from the ocean. If you stand in Kanyakumari in that tip of the Indian peninsula, you can actually see the three oceans, the Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, and Indian Ocean. And you can see the beautiful sun coming out of the ocean, and it's very beautiful. So around 200 devotees, all of us were there, and everybody were very eager to see the sun. And it was actually the month of December. But somehow on that morning, what happened was that the sky was cloudy. Generally, it doesn't happen. The sky is never cloudy in the month of December in Kanyakumari. But on that particular day, it was cloudy and we couldn't see the sunrise as such. So the objective reality is that event, that the sun rose in a cloudy sky, and hence nobody could enjoy the sunrise. All the devotees who went there, all of us had gone with our bead bags, and we were very eager to see the sunrise, but it didn't happen. So somebody may curse, somebody may think that अरे यार इतना दूर आए हम लोग एक ही दिन है यहाँ पर और वो भी sunrise देखने को नहीं मिला. But the point is, Prakriti is generally very stable and consistent, right? So just like Kapila says in third canto, that everything is very consistent about Prakriti. But part of that consistency is sometimes Prakriti throws up something very shockingly or suddenly. And then we have to see that with Nishkam Bhavana. That means even though I have gone to Kanyakumari and I am sitting in the ocean and I am trying to see sunrise, but the sky is cloudy, so I can't see the sunrise happening. I have to have a Nishkama Bhavana that, okay, it's fine. So maybe some other time we would see. This is what Prakriti is, and be happy with whatever we got. But if somebody feels too negative about it, then unnecessarily unhealthy emotions come. So this is basically what we are saying, that one has to, look at things. One has to change one's subjective vision, according to the objective reality that is there around. So going further, the objective reality of Prakriti is one thing, that is of inanimate matter. That is one thing. There is another type of reality around us, which is people around us on whom we have no control. So please note, there is a similarity between this and the previous thing. In the previous slide, I spoke about things in Prakriti on which we have no control. Like we have no control on how the sunrise will happen in Kanyakumari. We have no control about when coronavirus will come, when it will go. We have no control on that. Correct. We have no control on how the rainfall will be this season. We don't have control on it. That is one type of objective reality. Another type of reality around us is people around us on whom we have no control. Right. So we don't control other people. Right. We may wish that somebody else should behave in a particular way, but I don't have control over how he is going to behave. So there also one should have a drishtva, a subjective perception, where one accepts the way it is. So just like if you see the Bhagavad Gita, if you see Arjuna, what was Arjuna's main problem? Arjuna's main problem was that he was actually hoping that Bhishma and Drona will not come to fight on behalf of Duryodhana. So many of the acharyas explain, especially in that 1.20-21 Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna says, Senayor Ubayor Madhya Ratam Stapaya Mechuta. where Arjuna tells Krishna, hey Krishna, take my chariot in between the two armies and I want to see who has come to fight. And Krishna promptly brings the chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona and he says that, hey, look Partha, all these people have come to fight. So many acharyas say that Arjuna was thinking that maybe these people will not come. But the fact is that they had come to fight on behalf of Duryodhana. And Arjuna had to accept that these people are going to fight on my opposite side and I have to fight with them. That was a subjective reality for Arjuna. But initially he wasn't ready to accept. He found it very difficult. And if you see in the second chapter also, verse number 4, he is telling Krishna that, hey Krishna, how can I throw arrows at Bhishma and Drona? They are worthy of my worship. So the point is, just like Prakriti around us, we have no control over whether it is coronavirus or rain or whatever. We don't even have control over how other people will behave around us. They may be our own relatives like Bhishma and Drona, but we don't have control about how they will behave because we don't control them. All we have control is how we look at it. Correct? And if you see carefully, one of the most important purpose of Bhagavad Gita was Krishna wanted to change Arjuna's vision towards these people. Krishna wanted to make Arjuna convinced that no, you have to accept this, that Bhishma and Drona are going to fight over there only, and you will have to kill them. You will have to change your subjective perceptions, right? You can't be that emotionally attached. Oh, this person was my grandfather, he was my teacher, I love him so much, I can't shoot arrows. No, you cannot think all that now. Because that is the reality. He's fighting on the opposite side. तुम उसके बारे में कुछ कर ही नहीं सकते. So this is also another important application of this concept that we're talking, that just like we cannot control Prakriti around us, inanimate matter, like coronavirus or rain or sun, we can't even control people around us, even our own relatives. All we have control on is how we look at them, how our subjective perception is. Right, so just like we see, Yudhishthir was the best example. So many acharyas write that Yudhishthir was very clear that Bhishma and Drona are going to fight and I am going to fight them. He had no problem with it. Arjuna only needed this entire Bhagavad Gita because as in he had to hear this conversation to become ready to fight with Bhishma and Drona. But Yudhishthir was very clear about it. He also had respect for them, but he knew that they will come and fight on behalf of Duryodhana and he is ready to kill them. You know, he is ready to fight with them. So basically, that transformation had to happen in Arjuna, and which is what Krishna accomplished by speaking the Gita to him, right? But the point is, here also our subjective perception comes into picture. That means how we look at it. Correct. So I have given this example of Sushant Singh Rathod also. You know, so one person, many people have written about it. People say that one major reason why this fellow committed suicide was that because in Bollywood industry, it is very common that only if you have that legacy, you know, you're a son of a big film star or someone, you get many, you know, you're signed on various projects. Otherwise, you don't get opportunities. Correct. So this is kind of very commonly known in Bollywood or in most industry in India. Even sports industry in many places, it is like that. Unless you have some contact or, you know, you're the son of a big man, it kind of becomes a little difficult at one point to go ahead. But so that is in one sense the reality of Bollywood industry. And another thing some people were saying very much is that many of the directors in Bollywood, you know, they tend to be homosexual or whatever, and they actually sometimes some of them even ask these actors or actresses to compromise their body, you know, to get roles, etc., which is kind of common in such industries. So this is the reality of that industry. Now this gentleman, he could not adjust to that reality. Okay, so of course, I'm not saying that he should have compromised, but the point is, when you know that this is the reality of the industry, then you have to change your vision towards that whole thing. But he could not. You know, so many of his films were getting cancelled and all that, and finally he hung himself from the fan. So basically, this is another classic case of somebody who could not actually adjust to what is going around you, right? So there was the reality of the Bollywood industry, and either you had to adjust yourself to it, or you had to move out of it, or you have to find something else, and so on. But unfortunately, what he did was he ended up committing suicide. So this is what happens when you're. So I'm giving him as an example where this is what happens when you're not ready to, look at that objective reality properly, when you're not able to align with it. Correct? So then you get frustrated and you end up like this. Similarly, even if you see this whole Black Lives Matter movement, if you see the same principle, the principle is what? The principle is that, as I have explained even before on this particular topic, these people, they are unable to see the objective reality of the lives of blacks only, right? So as I told several times before, being only 6% of American population, the black males are involved in 45% of the crimes, or how 80% of their children are all born out of wedlock. So these are very objective realities in their community. But instead of seeing that, instead of trying to understand how they would grow, simply to blame someone else, it doesn't make any sense. So this is one very important. So I'm giving these two as an examples to show how that message of Gita, which is to learn to see things around us, right? Events around us, Prakriti around us, and adjust our own thought process, being more important, being actually the most important thing, rather than complaining about Prakriti or other people. Correct? So if you complain about Prakriti or if you complain about other people, then you just end up like another Sushant Singh, or, the blacks who are simply feeling that they are discriminated and this and that, but you don't grow in life. Okay, so now we are coming to the second point that we're discussing. So as I told you, we're discussing only two things today. One is this concept of subjective and objective reality, and the second thing is the concept of growth. Okay, so this is connected. So I'll be connecting this and the previous theme. So this is a little technical, so please pay attention. So if you see growth, how does a person grow in his life? Material life, spiritual life, whatever it is. Is it individual or is it collective? So just like, suppose sometimes we see a family, and we see in the family that there is a husband, wife. We see that, they are very, very intelligent, and, they take very good care of children. And we see that their children are also growing up very nicely. And when we see a family growing very nicely like that, immediately one feels that, array, this entire family has collectively grown so nicely. Correct? We feel that as if somebody is in that family, magically he would grow automatically. One feels like that. Or to give an easier example, if you look at most Marwadi people, they do very good business. Correct? Most Marwadis, they tend to be good business people. So when you see a community, a joint family of Marwadis, and you see that everybody in that family are business people, all the chachas, all the mamas, they all have one shop or they do some business, then you again feel that collectively that entire family unit has grown or whatever. So generally one feels like that. And on the other hand, when one sees communities which have suffered a lot, one feels that collectively they have been discriminated, and they are all down. So just like the black community currently, Afro-American community in United States, or maybe in India, the Dalit community, people feel that all of them have been discriminated and all of them have gone down. Okay, so we are going to discuss this theme a little bit and then connect it to the previous one. So there is this very famous, philosopher or whatever person, in the previous century. His name was Viktor Frankl. He was a Jew who was actually a survivor of the Nazi Holocaust. His wife, his father, brother, everybody had died in various concentration camps, and he somehow came out alive. And later he became a very, very famous person, and he spoke a lot about meaning and purpose to life and so on. So he would say something which is very famous. Even if you Google it, you will get it. He talks about this, that there is nothing like collective guilt. So basically, he was addressing the Austrians and the German people. And he was saying that, see, just because your grandfather's generation did something wrong by killing so many Jews, it doesn't mean that you all have to be guilty about it. Because तुम लोग ने गलती नहीं किया हो, unless you are continuing that legacy. If you have understood and gone ahead, then that's fine. You are not responsible for your grandfather's mistake. So he would tell like that, basically, which actually again makes a lot of sense, right? So what we are trying to say is that when a family of 4 grows, it means that every individual has grown. Outsiders only see consequences and not the efforts. But actually, every member of their family has made effort to grow. Similarly, if a Marwadi community has grown in business, it means every member of that community has worked and gone. Okay, maybe that community gave that kind of facility for a person to grow. But so basically, the idea that collectively one grows too easily is a myth, because it doesn't happen like that, right? So it is individual that grows. Correct. So why we are talking about this? Why we are talking about this is because if you see the Mahabharata and the Gita, it talks a lot about that individual growth. This is something that is called Antar Pravas. Antar Pravas means one's internal journey in life. So if you see the Mahabharata also, individual growth means what? Everybody does according to their nature. If you see this concept of Swadharma that we have been discussing from Bhagavad Gita, this concept of Swadharma is very much related to individual growth. That means what is good for you, you do that so that you grow. Okay, so if you see the Mahabharata also, it never anywhere talks about Pandavas saying that we are doing this for the pleasure of Krishna and so on. They never say that, kind of formally. Correct. So basically, whatever they are doing because it is their Swadharma. And then the fruits of that activity, as a matter of gratitude, they offer that to Krishna. So that's how it is. Correct. So basically, that subjective reality, connecting this to the previous point, the subjective reality, that means what is actually suitable for you or what is your own nature, you do that and you grow. Okay, so this applies at all points of life, whether it is growth or whether it is death. Okay, so just like, when Bhakti Charu Maharaj passed away recently, some people felt that, it was a little sad that there was nobody around him while departing. And one thing about Bhakti Charu Maharaj was that he was the personality who was who organized hundreds of people around Prabhupada when Prabhupada departed. So, Maharaj had personally, he was Prabhupada's servant those days and cook. And he had arranged for so many people to come, during Prabhupada's departure. But around his own departure, somehow nobody was there. So some devotees felt little bad about it. That ऐसा कैसे हुआ कि उन्होंने इतने सारे लोगों को लेके आए थे प्रभुपाद के पास, प्रभुपाद डिपार्ट करते टाइम, लेकिन उनके समय पे कोई भी नहीं था आजू बाजू में. Correct. Now again, if you look at this one point, so again, why are we discussing this here? Because one feels that collectively, if there are many people around chanting and doing so many things, it's kind of, people view that as very auspicious, which is again fine. So just like we see when Prabhupada passed away, so many hundreds of devotees were chanting kirtan around him. When Bhishma Pitama was passing away, if you see in the Bhagavatam, that so many people were there around him. Krishna was there, the Pandavas were there, Narad Muni was there, so many Devatas were there, everybody was there around him, when Bhishma was passing away. And we also have that chapter, even if you see Haridas Thakur's disappearance, Mahaprabhu was there and Swarup Damodar was there, all of them were doing kirtan. And Haridas Thakur took Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet on his heart, on his chest. And, he passed away like that. So when we read all these passing aways, one feels that, Arey wah, itne sare log agar aage kisi ke passing away mein, then isn't that fortunate? Certainly it is. But if you see, amazingly, the Shastra gives so many other examples also, where nobody was there. If you see Kunti is the aunt of Krishna and such a exalted personality. How did she pass away? If you read in the Mahabharata, she basically goes to the forest along with Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, and in the forest fire, she's burnt actually. Okay, so one Acharya, Madhu Acharya, he writes that Kunti, he writes about Kunti's mood. He says that when Kunti was departing, she was thinking, thank you, Lord Narayan, you have come as Agni Narayan, so that I can offer myself fresh in yourself. Because one is supposed to offer because the Antya Samskar means one offers one's body in a fresh state to the fire, rather than keeping it for a very long time like that. So, but the point is that Kunti passed away like that. There was nobody around. And now if you see the Pandavas passing away also, right? So put that picture there. All the 5 Pandavas, Draupadi and that dog, as they were climbing that mountain, wherever they were going, one by one, they were falling. And if you see Draupadi, when she fell, the other husbands kept walking. So the question is, what happened to that Draupadi's body? You know, Draupadi is considered Krishna's very intimate friend, Sakha. She's a Sakhi of Krishna, you know, but her body just fell like that. And what is because of Draupadi? Even Bhima, Arjuna, you know, these people were such exalted personalities, but their body just falls somewhere in the mountain. And there is no mention that there was sandalwood and, you know, there was chandan on their bodies, and we don't even know what happened to that body. It just fell somewhere, and, you know, apparently if you see the Mahabharata, there was nothing done about it. Perhaps Parikshit Maharaj, back in his kingdom, he must have just created a body out of straw. So that's what they would do. If somebody passes away in a forest, then how they do the Antya Samskar is they create a body out of straw, and they do all the final rites to that body, which is made out of straw. And that's it. But that original body is there somewhere, right? So Shastra allows like that. Correct? So somebody has drowned in the ocean and passed away. फिर उनका अंत्य संस्कार कैसे करने का? Body नहीं ना. So then they make a body out of straw, which is called a prati body, and then they do the final rites to that. But what I'm saying is, so many great personalities like Pandavas and Kunti, when they passed away, they were just alone. There was nobody there. So the question is, which is glorious? You know, on one hand, we see Bhishma Pitama, we see Prabhupada, or we see Haridas Thakur passing away with so many people around. And on the other hand, you see so many examples of people who passed away with actually nobody around. You know, and not only they passed away with nobody around, their body also just fell somewhere, just like that. You know, maybe an animal ate it or whatever. Nobody knows anything about it. So the question is, which is glorious? Okay, so the answer is that it is all based on who experienced it. Correct. So because the individual growth is important. If that individual has grown to that level, it doesn't matter whether there was a collective effort towards the end to help that person. Okay. So similarly about Bhakti Charu Maharaj also. So even if no one was there around him, some people say that there was one devotee who was allowed in the hospital or whatever. But the point is that is not considered important. Because the individual growth is considered most important. Correct. And because even if so many people are around us, but if one has not reached that particular state internally, then there is no use of people being around. And on the other hand, if nobody is there also, but if one has individually grown well, then it doesn't matter whether anybody is there or not there. Okay. So this is because that subjective reality is again most important, right? So you define based on the person who experienced it. The rest, everything is for encouraging talk, right? So because facts have no color, no taste, it has no sentiments. You know, feelings may or may not be there in facts, but you have to make your feelings in fact to change your vision, right? So that's why Shastra, if you see, like now if you see another passing away, so I've just given another example here of our what's his name, Parikshit Maharaj is passing away. If you see Parikshit Maharaj is passing away, if you see that is described in 12th canto chapter 5. But if you see one chapter before that, chapter 4 of 12th canto, if you see chapter 4 of 12th canto, the last instruction that Shukdev Goswami gives Parikshit is about the 4 types of annihilation. So that's how he prepares Parikshit Maharaj before he passes away. The 4 types of annihilation. He says that the 4 types of annihilation are constant annihilation. That means every time the body is dying. Occasional annihilation, like every day of Brahma, everything is finished. The final annihilation of the universe, where the universe itself is destroyed. And the annihilation of the living entity, where his material existence is destroyed and he goes back to the spiritual world. So this is the last chapter that Shukadev talks to Parikshit. And interestingly, after speaking whatever he did, Shukadev Goswami was very blunt with Parikshit Maharaj. He tells him that, give up your animalistic propensity, and give up your body. And it is said that Shukadev Goswami leaves and goes. He doesn't even sit to see how Parikshit Maharaj is passing away. Generally, most of us may think that, "Arey, 7 din baithe the wahan par, at least let him sit and, maybe chant some, do some harinam when Parikshit is being bitten by the snake." Kuch nahi. Parikshit had to do his own antar pravas, his own internal journey. right? And that's it. He just, Shukdev Goswami just walked off, and Parikshit, the Takshak came, and it was done. So again, what you see here is that focus on that individual growth, right? What was most important is whether Parikshit has grown individually. It didn't matter about what all the others feel. It didn't matter whether Shukdev Goswami is going to be there near his deathbed or he's not going to be there. Okay. So just one more example of the subjective and objective reality. If you see the Shastra, it very clearly says that as long as, so this you see in 10th canto, where Vasudev tells that as long as I have effort, as long as I have energy, I will try to protect the body of Devaki. But despite my efforts, if Devaki's body cannot be protected, then that is fate. That is prarabdha. But I will try to protect. So this is a very, this is a perfect way of looking at things, right? So objectively, this world is designed in such a way that there are many troubles. But subjectively, one tries to ensure that one has a long life, one has a healthy life. But despite our effort, if something happens, then we adjust to that also. So that is also important, right? So just like there was one devotee, his grandmother or whoever, at age of 90, she's kind of, very, very old, and many parts of the body are not functioning properly. But unfortunately, this lady, even though she's 90 years, she's not ready to give up her body. As in, she's still talking to her grandchildren, others, that I want to see this movie, that movie, and she's still in her own world. So the Shastra says that again, objective reality, if it is such that our body is old and invalid, then subjective reality of the individual should be such that you are ready to leave now, rather than thinking that I want to keep sitting here, because there is no point in sitting in such a body. Correct. So this is how our Shastra, they're very, very practical and pragmatic. As long as life is there, they always encourage us to fight it out and to see how we can extend our life. But if death comes, or if something like that happens, then one is advised to, okay, adjust with that thought process also. Correct. And again, if you see, because one thing is that, okay, so just to give another example here, in this Star Plus Mahabharata, there is one very nice dialogue. It's not there in original Mahabharata, but it's kind of very interesting. So Draupadi, what happens is, in Star Plus Mahabharata, the way they show is that Draupadi comes to know that her children will die before the war only. Krishna tells her that तुम्हारे पांचों बच्चों की मृत्यु होगी or whatever, right? But then later, after the battle is over, when Ashwatthama kills all the 5 children of Draupadi, uh, she basically tells Krishna that had I really known that all my children will die, maybe I don't know whether I would have agreed for this war. Okay, so she tells Krishna that knowing what will happen is different from happening what you know, right? So basically, that subjective reality comes only when that experience happens. So basically, what Draupadi says, it's not there in original Mahabharata, but what they show here is that when the children are dead, Draupadi feels, that time she feels that when I have undergone this experience, then my feeling is very different than when this experience was not there. So basically, what they teach us is that subjective reality most of the time awakens only when the experience happens, only when something happens objectively around, then we understand. Otherwise, we really don't. Okay. So just to make some last points here. So on this point also, growth, individual or collective. Okay, so it is very important that individuals grow. Now, if you see, even politically, just to give one simple example, China's growth is a collective growth. If you see very carefully, there the focus on individual is not there much. There is no that kind of freedom. In fact, there was one very nice article that spoke of how China, they've made even winning Olympic gold medals like a factory. That means in childhood only they see some child is good at swimming or some particular thing, then they will train him like anything, like a robo, and they will ensure that that fellow wins a gold medal. And in fact, his feelings, or because somebody may be good at swimming, but he may not actually want to practice swimming for 8 hours a day and win a gold medal. He may not be keen on that. But none of that is given any importance. I mean, this is just one example. But as a country, if you see carefully, they have focused on collective growth, and they have grown collectively also. Correct, in terms of money, they are just next to America, $16 trillion economy, whatever they have. But at the same time, if you see, it is so kokla, as in there are so many predictions actually, political, astrological, that just like Russia broke up, even the China could break up. Because the thing is, unless you have allowed individuals to experience and grow, that collective growth is kind of very superficial and kokla. It doesn't actually sustain over a very long term. So that is why, if you see our scriptures, they focus so much on the individual. Again, if you see Upanishadic Grantha, if you see Bhagavad Gita also, Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna to Arjuna, one person to one person. Correct? Because that is actually very, very individualistic. Correct? Arjuna had a problem. Very contextual it is, Bhagavad Gita, if you see, in one sense. Though, of course, it is also universal in a sense that the same situation is applicable to everyone. But at the same time, if you see, as far as the story in the Mahabharata goes, it's very, very contextual. What happens in Arjuna's life, Krishna addresses Arjuna one-on-one. And, and that is not only the Gita Upanishad, but all Upanishads are said to be like that. If you see all Upanishads, they are a dialogue between one guru and one disciple. Because if you see our Shastras, they focus a lot on the growth of the individual. Because that is how it is. Hari Katha can be done for thousands of people. Hari Kirtan can be done for thousands of people. But Upanishadic talk, if you see the Puranas, like Bhagavad Purana is spoken to thousands of sages by Shaunaka Rishi and all that. But if you see Upanishads, where there is a lot of focus on individual growth, it is always done one-to-one. Because in some sense, Adhyatma also is self-centered. As in, you have to focus, you have to understand what is good for you. So just to give a simple example about how one has to be honest with oneself. So if you see chanting, if you see some devotees, they like to chant, in big groups. Some devotees, they like that. When they are sitting in big circles with many people, they like to chant like that. Some like to chant, in a very smaller group or just with their family, or some people like to chant at home only. Now, if that is so one has to understand where one fits in very nicely, or what is one's comfort level there, because that is how it is, right? If I like to chant in a particular way, in a particular type of surrounding at a particular time, then that is what works for me. And then that is important. So I cannot simply say that no, it has to be done, like some other way. It doesn't happen like that. Correct? So so I'll just conclude by saying this, that if you see Bhagavad Gita, there are only 2 verses in Bhagavad Gita that are actually repeated. Generally, Krishna has spoken 700 verses and he has hardly repeated anything. But there are only 2 verses that Krishna has repeated. One is that Man Mana Bhava Mad Bhakto verse, which Krishna speaks of in 9.34. And he again speaks of that in 18.65, where Krishna tells Arjuna that Man Mana Bhava Mad Bhakto Madhya Jimam Namaskuru, that particular first line of that verse. And another thing that is spoken twice in Bhagavad Gita is that Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha Paradharman Sunushtita. Krishna speaks of that in 3rd chapter. And again, Krishna 3.35, and then again Krishna speaks that in 18.47. Krishna speaks the same verse, Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha Paradharman Sunushtita. There where Krishna says that better you do your own Swadharma and not somebody else's. So why does Krishna speak of that? Because Krishna has given importance to your subjective reality. What is good for you? What is good for your individual growth? Because you cannot be enslaved. You have to make choice according to your situation, and you simply cannot deny the way you feel about things. And nigraha cannot be done. Like Krishna speaks in both those verses that nigraha kim karishyati. Nigraha means you can't artificially control or be somebody else. It is in this context that we are talking about the importance of individual growth, because that individual growth is related to that subjective reality. And then one can see the world and all situations in such a way that one is then actually one becomes a yogi. One becomes a rishi. Rishi means one who has that drishya. Drishya means that kind of vision where one aligns with whatever is happening around him, and then by and large one is unaffected. and one continues very peacefully in life. Okay, so I think I'll just stop here. Maybe I'll just briefly. So basically, we just discussed 2 points actually, and so I'll just summarize what we discussed, and then maybe we'll take questions. So this was a self-application topic. So I spoke about objective, subjective reality. I started talking about how in Prakriti is very fact-centric, reductionist, and doesn't care for our feelings. So whether it is rain, a virus, or sunrise, it will happen according to Prakriti's own scheme of things, without caring for what somebody feels. Subjective reality means how I look at that situation and happening around me, how I adjust with Prakriti, how I unnecessarily do not rebel against Prakriti, how I cooperate with Prakriti. Because when we do that, then we are very comfortable. And I said that this is one of the key messages of the Gita. Because in the Gita, Arjuna also had this problem. So just like there is objective reality of Prakriti, there is a reality of people surrounding us. So just like there will be people, whether it is Bhishma, Drona for Arjuna, correct, whom Arjuna did not want to fight. Arjuna did not expect they will fight on behalf of Duryodhan. But that was the reality was not what Arjuna desired. They did fight on behalf of Duryodhan. Correct. Or similarly, the Sushant Singh, he was thinking that this kind of favoritism shouldn't exist in Bollywood or so on. But that's the reality of that industry. Okay. Or the blacks, for example. So there is a reality in their community. So you have to understand that reality, and then you have to adjust your feelings accordingly. Otherwise, you just tend to get suicidal, or you tend to just fight it out. But Arjuna, guided by Krishna, came to the right platform where he could see things properly. Then the second point that I spoke was about growth itself. That how growth actually, as per our Shastra, I actually started with that Viktor Franklin. It's a very interesting speech. If you Google on YouTube, his speech is there. He had given this speech in 1988 on the 50th occasion of the Holocaust in Austria. So very interesting point. He talks about this idea that collective growth or guilt doesn't exist. So I spoke about it because in our Shastra also, there is a lot of focus on the individual growth. And this individual growth is considered most important. So I gave an example of dying, that how it isn't really important whether too many people are there around one. So just like we saw examples of Bhishma or Srila Prabhupada or Haridas Thakur, where many people were there around while dying. But sometimes it does happen that somebody dies alone, like Bhaktichar Maharaj passed away by and large alone. We also saw Kunti Maharani or, all the Pandavas. They all died in such a way that even their bodies weren't cremated, in a very formal sense. We don't even know what happened to it. But the thing is, none of that is considered very important. What is important is how the individual grows. And this individual growth happens by focusing on the self. And I said that how the Upanishadic Grantha deals with the individual. Harikatha is done collective, but Upanishadic Grantha is always individualistic. Right? Whether Yamaraj is speaking to Nachiketas or whether, one Rishi is speaking to one student. If you see, all Upanishads are like that. Because there is a lot of focus on the growth of that individual. And that individual growth happens by understanding one's Swadharma, understanding one's own nature. Swadharma not only in terms of activity, Swadharma even in terms of sadhana. That means what kind of sadhana or how I would like to do my sadhana. Especially with your children, we will all see that we would have to give them particular type of worship or things which actually suit their nature and personality. Because it's very, very individualistic. Very individualistic. What actually suits a person's nature. So the Gita is like that. And that's why I said that Krishna repeats Shreyan Swadharmo Vigraha twice in the Bhagavad Gita to emphasize on that growth of that individual. Correct. And that individual growth is in line with, and when individuals grow, then the society grows. So when every Marwadi does the business nicely, then the entire Marwadi community does the business well. When everyone in the family progresses well, then only that whole family as a collective unit grows well. Correct. So it is the individual growth that is first, and then the collective happens. Otherwise, even in a right. Otherwise, even in a big setting, if the individual is not growing, that person may be left behind. So okay, so this is what we saw today. There are any questions I would like to take? I think I can see Shamlila Prabhu's hand up, so I'm just going according to whatever order I see. Please go ahead, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Can
Bol.
you hear me?
Yeah, very much. Please go ahead.
Okay, Prabhuji, what is the Hindi word for this objective or subjective reality? Can we understand this like in one sense, subjective is basically Swadharma, objective is Parodharma, but then there are many places this you have used in your talk objective and subjective reality. So what is Hindi or Sanskrit for this? We can understand this.
Yeah, actually, okay. So from the Gita's perspective, it is not like a word that comes, but from the Gita's perspective, it is an entire background. So as I told you, see, objective reality, if you see, honestly, these are modern words, objective and subjective reality. At least these words, these phrases are modern. They're used by philosophers. But it is very much part of the Gita setting, though it is not a word like that. Objective means on things which are beyond me. Right? Something is happening in Prakriti. So I'm not part of the Prakriti, right? I mean, I'm not controlling the rain and the sun, right? So I'm not controlling coronavirus. So objective means which is happening as a matter of fact. Oh, ho raha hai. Right? So in one sense, this concept is dealt with by Krishna, if you see in several places in Gita. He doesn't call it like that, but if you see, for example, 2.14, where Krishna says that Shitoshna Sukha Dukkadaha, right? Agama Apayano Anityastam Tidikshasa Bharata. So where Krishna says that like the rain will be there, the scorching summer will be there, or winter will be there, that is objective reality. Krishna speaks of the concept in Gita. Krishna says your subjective perspective is that you tolerate it and you go beyond it. That's what Krishna is saying, right? Second chapter, in so many places he talks about it. So he doesn't use these words, objective, subjective, but the theme is there. And the other thing which is there in Gita is this whole concept that Arjuna had a problem that why Bhishma and Drona are on the other side. Oh, uska problem tha. But that nothing you can do about it. How do you control another person? Because he's outside of you, na? अब समझ गए ना, even our relatives who are external to us, they may have their own conception and they may want to do it something some way, but we will have to adjust our vision accordingly. We can't get disturbed because of them. So if you see, the whole cause of Bhagavad Gita was in one sense Arjuna's dilemma with Bhishma and Drona. अगर Bhishma Drona opposite side में नहीं होते तो maybe Bhagavad Gita would have never happened, because Arjuna wouldn't have been confused. Arjuna's one of the main problems was Bhishma Drona are there on the other side, which he says in a couple of places, right? So that was also in one sense objective. That means you don't have control over it. वो आपके बाहर है, वो हो रहा है. आप कुछ कर नहीं सकते. Correct? आपको adjust करना पड़ेगा अपना vision. You have to change your own vision of looking at it. Just like Yudhishthira had already changed. He knew that these people are going to be here. मेरे को मेरा vision adjust करना पड़ेगा. इनके साथ युद्ध करना ही पड़ेगा मेरे को. I can't simply say. So it is not that this word comes in Bhagavad Gita anywhere, but the concept is there in Gita for sure. Concept is there in Gita, correct? And the concept of drishya, subjective reality, is very much there as a word in the form of this word drishya. Drishya means, like I was saying, right, 2.16. 2.16, or even in 13th chapter, there is one verse, 13.20, I forgot which one. I'll look at that and maybe now only I'll just see one second. 13 point... yeah, I think it is 13.30, where there also Krishna says that Krishna uses the word drishya, drishtva. These kind of words come. Drishya, drishtva means how you see things. That is subjective reality. So subjective reality, there is a word in Bhagavad Gita, दृश्य और दृष्टवा. मतलब आप कैसे देखते हो प्रकृति को, आपका विजन क्या है उसके प्रति. आप समझ गए ना, जो हो रहा है वो तो हो रहा है आजू बाजू में, बट हाउ आर यू सीइंग इट, that is actually called as drishya or drishtva in Bhagavad Gita. So that word is there. Is that okay?
Okay, this in the Black's Life Matter, how do you say objective and subjective here?
Yeah, no, I used that. Yeah, correct. So there, what I wanted to say is that there are some objective facts about Black lives. As in the Afro-American community, if you see, there are some bare facts. See, objective reality मतलब fact. आप उसको challenge नहीं कर सकते. That means the fact is that 85% of the Black people are born without father. 85%. मतलब 10 में से 8-9 बच्चे उनका बाप नहीं होता. मतलब he is born only to a single mother. They are, even though they are 6% of population, they are 45-50% of the criminal मतलब crimes वो लोग ही करते हैं. आप समझ रहे हो ना? Even now I'm sure those of our devotees also who are there in America or Canada, अगर कोई black area है, black ghetto, थोड़ा डर लगता है वहाँ जाने को. मतलब you know, you feel that not that whites are very nice, but you feel more afraid of the black people because you feel that, you know, they may just take a gun and shoot or pata nahi kya karenge. So what I wanted to say was, why I use that is, there are some facts about their own community. Correct. So the ideal thing for them to grow is to accept ये facts है हमारे यहाँ, and then to change your vision towards it. मतलब वो subjective reality, वो दृष्टवा कि हमको ग्रो करने के लिए हमको क्या करना पड़ेगा. लेकिन अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये लोग कर नहीं रहे ना वैसा. सिर्फ दूसरों को ब्लेम करते हैं या बोलते हैं कि हमको गवर्नमेंट सपोर्ट चाहिए. आप समझ रहे हो ना पॉइंट? मतलब आई कनेक्टेड इट टू से दैट आप इंडिविजुअल ग्रोथ पे फोकस नहीं करना चाहते लोग. मतलब nobody wants to work hard. People simply want money from government. If you see whether the Dalits or whatever in India also, or whether you see these kind of people, they just want facility like that, easy facility. And they feel that अगर गवर्नमेंट पैसा देगा, ये देगा, वो देगा, हम लोग आगे बढ़ेंगे. इंडिविजुअल ग्रोथ पे फोकस करना नहीं चाहते, और दे डोंट वांट टू चेंज देयर विजन टू लाइफ इटसेल्फ कि हमको ग्रो करना है. इसको ब्लेम करके क्या फायदा मेरे को? आर यू गेटिंग? इन दैट कॉन्टेक्स्ट आई यूज दैट एग्जांपल. इज दैट ओके?
Yeah, so basically, if I summarize, accept the objective reality and change one's vision to individually grow.
Yeah, accept what is happening in Prakriti, accept the way people are around us, accept certain bare facts of life, and then see how to adjust your own vision towards that and grow individually. That's exactly what we were saying in one line today.
Perfect. And Prabhuji, just one thing, this 1988, you said, who gave speech in Austria?
Viktor Frankl. This fellow was he's a Jew. He passed away actually. Passed away I think in 1997. He was a victim of the Holocaust. You know, his family and all died. So basically, I quoted him because he speaks of something in context of you know, which is a concept. He speaks of many concepts accidentally or whatever, but which are supported by our Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta. So that's why I just quoted him.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hare Bhau. Yeah, Smithan Nimai Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very much. Please go ahead.
Prabhuji, in the family examples, sometimes you said, right, collective achievement and individual achievement. But sometimes the individual achievements or aspirations, they tend to kind of go towards or go against the common achievement or the common good, right? And typical example is Mahabharata. So Pandav, Kaurav dispute. So in the current family situations, how should we actually, like, you know, look at it objectively? Like, you know, if sometimes we see that there are disputes in the family, you know, subjective analysis, what, like, as per the Grahastha Ashram, what should be the subjective analysis towards that, or a reality?
Yeah, good. Yeah, see, basically what I was trying to say is that in a family of 4 also, or 5, if there are 2 children, 3 children, maybe most of us have 2 children, some of us have 3. So if you see, why I said that is that as parents, we would have to focus on every child's growth. So it's not that if one child grows well, the other will automatically grow. It doesn't happen like that. So the classic example is the Pandavas and Kauravas only. The Pandavas grew very well, but the Kauravas didn't grow at all, literally. Correct. So it is. So when you say that, now the first point that you raised is that an individual may have his own agenda or whatever. That is not wrong if it is not contradictory to dharma. So for example, if a child, let's say, he wants to join military, that's fine. I mean, so perhaps as parents, we may have not thought of military as a career for our children, but because that's an individual growth and that's his perception. So if he feels that that's what he wants to do in life, then that's fine. So the point is, as long as anything is in line with dharma, even if it is not a common family plan or an agenda like that, if the individual feels he will grow like that, then the family should support that person. Okay. The problem is
Okay,
if an
Prabhu.
individual wants to do something outside dharma. But
Mhm.
there also, you don't have control once the child is beyond 16. It's
Okay.
such an amazing age. This Chanakya, what he
Yes.
says, that when a boy is 16, he becomes your friend. I mean, my son is right now 16, elder one. So you
Yes.
see that sudden change in the personality. Somehow it just
Yes.
magically happens. When they are past 15, there is a personality that comes, उनका खुद का personality बाहर आ जाता है. Then after that, they have their own thought process, how they want to do. You're really like a friend to them. You can't tell them too much that अभी ऐसे ही करो, वैसे करो. नहीं होता, कुछ चलता नहीं है अभी. अभी is literally like a friend only. So basically, really speaking, whatever growth we can do for your children is only till 14 actually, till that age. Once their voice,
Yes,
if he's a boy, once the voice breaks and the mustache comes, then he's his own individual. He has his own strong personality, which is good, which is what the Shastra is. So
Yes.
then as an individual, his nature will come out. Then you will have to look at that nature and then, support him accordingly. And if the dharmic foundation is there properly, then as long as they have their own dreams, it's fine, But the point is, everything should be done in line with dharma. So that part
Okay.
is the growing up part, which is the focus early on. Yeah, okay.
Yes,
That makes
sir.
sense. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. This was absolutely very close to what I wanted to ask, and you addressed that. Thank you so much.
Haripal. Yeah, Harsha Lalita Mati, you have a question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat.
Prabhuji, this Bhishma Dev is a Mahajan and great devotee of the Lord. Then, being so wise, still he chose particular time to leave his body. He doesn't need it, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, see, Mataji, he had a facility. He had a facility of giving up his body on his own will. So when you have some facility, then you always try to do best as per that facility. So if you don't have facility, then it's a different thing. So for example, the Pandavas, if you see Draupadi and all, they fell at some point of time. वो ऐसा कुछ facility नहीं था उनको कि कब देव छोड़ना है. But Bhishma had that facility. So the idea is, if you have a facility, then you make best use of that facility because you respect that facility, because that facility is given to you by God, by your superiors, by the universal power. तो आपको उसका पालन करना चाहिए. So I mean, technically, certainly, it wouldn't have mattered had Bhishma passed away even before. He would have certainly got back to Godhead. That's not the point. In fact, most commentators of our acharyas, they say that everybody who died on the battle of Kurukshetra went back to spiritual world. So why would Bhishma not have gone? Certainly he would have gone. But because he had a facility, he thought he would wait for the most important time. That was one thing. And also he wanted to see the Pandavas well situated before passing away. He wanted to see them in a royal dress, everything. He had that love for them. And that is why Krishna also makes all the Pandavas dress very gorgeously when they go to Bhishma's deathbed, because that would give him a lot of pleasure to see that my grandchildren are now very nicely settled after such a. And that's exactly what happened. When Bhishma saw the Pandavas dressed very nicely, tears started falling from his eyes. And he felt that, oh, you all have suffered so many reversals. That bhava came out, which Krishna wanted to bring it out. You can see it from that perspective also. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah. Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Haribol. Yeah, Vaibhavanand Prabhu, you had a question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Haribol.
My question is related to, the way we are discussing about leaving devotees. There are wives of Krishna. Once Krishna left, so it is said that Krishna's wives were stolen after, once Krishna left. By thieves and, dacoits. And also related question that how curses work, because, Krishna was cursed and Bhishma Dev was blessed. Now, in today's world, we see that, curses work more than the blessings. So, if you could clarify.
Yeah. Okay. So, see, okay, in today's world, well, see, actually, that way speaking, for curse to work, also you need a lot of tapasya. So, just like for blessing to give blessing to somebody, also you need tapobal. To give shrap, also you need tapobal. Today's people, they may give a lot of curses and bad words to everyone. Our whole Twitter and social media is filled with that. But that doesn't mean that they will work because, right? Because they don't have the tapobal. You may say anything you want, but you need a tapobal na, for your curse to work. So that's a different thing. So we need not worry too much about that. On the other hand, about Krishna and the wives of Krishna passing away the way they did, see, that is what we need not feel at a little bit also that, oh, if, see, the point is material nature is the way it is, right? So things like accidents or fight between families, things can happen. So Krishna actually demonstrates in his own life passing away the highest nishkama bhav. If you see that passing away of Krishna, if you see that 11th canto, Krishna's children are being killed in front of his own eyes. Can you imagine? Pradyumna, Samba, all these people die in front of Krishna's eyes. And Krishna is just sitting there like that. Can you imagine? All your children are, Krishna had so many children, but everyone dies in his own presence. सब एक दूसरे को मार रहे और मर रहे, ये उसको मार रहा है, grandson is killing someone, uncle is killing nephew. Can you imagine? Your whole family in front of your eyes is just killing each other, and Krishna was not affected. So Krishna is actually demonstrating the highest quality of nishkama bhavana. Nishkama bhavana means in this world things will happen in ways on which you have no control, and you accept it. And this is not possible for anybody. So that is why Krishna does that to himself, to show a very superlative example of what happens to his family. There are so many reasons why his family passes away like that. For that, you have to read whole 11th canto. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's commentary is amazing on 11th canto, which Hridayanand Maharaj has quoted in the purports, if you see. But in essence, one important lesson Krishna shows through his own departure is Nishkama Bhavana. That in this world, you behave Nishkama. This Nishkama Karma Yoga, which we are talking from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna really demonstrates that in his own departure. And I think there is no better lesson than that for me, at least, from that. Yeah. Yamuna Jivan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat. Prabhuji, I had this one question about, we hear that death can come at any time and we need to be Krishna conscious as much as possible. Like for children, they have this always kind of fear that death can come anytime. And yet, philosophically, yes, it's true. But on the other hand side, we need to progress ahead, and then, we also need to do other activities. So there is always confusion. So how do we give the balanced understanding to our children? Because at one point we tell them that we have to see life as a journey. So what is more balanced understanding, if you could elaborate on that?
Yeah, actually, I personally feel this whole idea of death, I mean, a very strong feeling that we have overemphasized this in our discussions in terms of with our devotees, especially in our movement. बहुत ज्यादा इस पे फोकस किया है हमने कि डेथ आएगा. I mean, I remember, I always tell this example. I will tell this again. When I was in PICT in 1994, 95, those days we used to have preparatory leave for engineering exam. And before our exam, so myself, Premnidhi Prabhu, Gaursundar Prabhu, we all would stay in one flat. And those days, Krishnanand Prabhu was our temple president. And our Premnidhi Prabhu would always invite Krishnanand Prabhu during exam time. Because PL, chutti rehta tha. So, ladke ghar mein, all the boys would stay in the flat only. So, he would come. And Prabhuji would inevitably start the lecture by saying, what if the final exam of death comes before this engineering exam? And then, we would have Chaitanya Katha for 2-3 hours. So now looking back, I feel that Well, exam of death did not come, but my final exam came and I had a problem. I didn't do too well in that exam. The point is that too much, talking on death. If you see, it's not even so Shastric. If you see in 7th canto, Narad Muni tells this. There is a verse. I'll tell you the verse number also later. Narad Muni says that one should not take life seriously. One should not take death seriously. Likha hai aisa Bhagavad mein. That means don't take death too seriously and become too paranoid about it. You actually become paralyzed. Imagine you tell a 17-year-old boy is going to give an engineering exam that you may die anytime. अरे उसका पूरा एनर्जी चला जाएगा. वो बोलेगा यार मैं क्यों काम करूं, कभी भी मर जाऊंगा. I'm struggling so hard to get into engineering entrance or whatever. No, it's not like that. So everything has a time. See, generally speaking, we also assume that people live long life because it's your duty to live a long life. I mean, each of us should try to live 100 years. That's actually the mission of human life, to ensure that you live healthy life of 100 years. You try your best to do that. Okay, if you cannot, then that's a different thing, but you try. And that is actually very Shastric. If you see Vasudev, he tells in 10th canto that we should try to extend our life as much as possible. Just because, we don't think that, oh, let me die quick. No, you try to extend your life. But when death is about to come, then again you get detached also. That is also there. That means when you know that abhi death aane wala hai, then you withdraw from everything. Then that means you should die before you die. As in, die before you die means you should be ready to quit your body before actually you're forced to be kicked out. So it's like, you're staying as a tenant, and before your makan malik says get out, if you have symptoms, मतलब तुमको पता चल गया मकान मालिक बोल रहा है जाना पड़ेगा, indirectly he has given many clues that you have to leave the flat, then better to live 1 week before he actually takes our saman and throws it out, because that's very insulting. तो उसके पहले हम ही जाना अच्छा है. So basically, so at that stage, thinking about that death coming and all is important. But I think otherwise, in our normal routine life, we should not focus on that so much, that death will come, death will come. Okay, so even if it comes, so what is going to happen? What is going to change? I mean, even if somebody is going to die very soon, क्या होने वाला है? जितना consciousness तुम्हारा है, उतना ही artificially you can't barge your consciousness beyond one level. I think especially for children, they shouldn't even hear about it. I mean, as in, they may just hear about it as just one small fact among the unlimited facts that are present in Bhagavad Gita. Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Dosha Anudarshanam. That is one place where Krishna says that one should be conscious of the evils of birth, old age, disease and death. उससे ज्यादा भगवद गीता में भगवान ने बताया नहीं है तू मरने वाला है करके अर्जुन को. Right, I always say that the Pandavas were 90-year-old when they fought the Kurukshetra war, and they lived only 125 years. So last का 35 years इतना राज करने के लिए इतना बड़ा युद्ध करने का मतलब. So Gita really focuses on Nishkama Bhavana without thinking too much about this, that death will come like that. So I really feel, as far as children are concerned, they should not even hear about this, just more than that one verse in Bhagavad Gita amongst 700 verses. उतना weightage बस, उससे ज़्यादा नहीं. Yeah, hope that answers. Is that Uddhavanand Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dandavat
Yeah,
pranam.
please. Dandavat.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have one question. Actually, Prabhupada, I have actually, honestly speaking, question regarding death only. So
Okay.
the question is like, Prabhupada gives an example that for devotees, the death come like a cat for kitten. But for non-devotees who are not devoted to Lord, the death comes as a cat for the rat. So
Yeah.
in this regard, actually, I have
This
a
is
question.
subjective and objective vision. This is
subjective.
subjective. No, once again. Yeah. Yeah. What is your question? Sorry.
So my question is, this example actually gives a objective analysis. Now when we practically see this event happening, for example, some devotee passing away or some non-devotee passing away, so how to see this exactly? How to say,
Yeah,
realize
good,
this
good, good.
example in
Yeah, good, good. This example that you gave, this is a classic thing of what we were talking in our class. Objective reality means what? Death. Death is an objective reality. हर एक व्यक्ति मरने वाला है. That is an objective reality. Subjective reality means what? How you look at death. That means what Prabhupada is saying here is that a non-devotee, or non-devotee means somebody who is not a yogi, that person fears death, क्योंकि उसका plan अभी तक चल रहा है ना, उसको बहुत बड़ा महल बनाने का है, ये वो, उसको बहुत attachment है. So when death comes, he's fearful of it. Like Prabhupada gives the example of somebody in Bengal who was about to die and he was telling the doctor, मैं इतना पैसा दूंगा, मेरा life please extend करो. So such a person subjectively looks at death as a cat coming to kill a rat, because he's afraid of that death. He has not accepted the objective reality of death. But a devotee or a yogi, he has accepted the objective reality of death, and because he has accepted it very well in his heart, he knows that it is just another phase in life which is just about to cross over to the next place. So because he is like that, his vision of death has now changed. So the subjective reality for him is the death is like a cat coming to lift a kitten. So it is the same thing, you know. So what मैंने जो lecture में बोला ना, objective subjective, उसका example है आपने जो दिया, अच्छा example दिया. So but it's exactly an example of what we just discussed in our class. Death is the objective reality. The vision of a yogi and a non-yogi is what Prabhupada is talking about. Because yogi is willing to depart. And it's actually a fact. So many people are like that, even so many common people. So please note, you know, many times we think that, you know, I mean, certainly, you know, when a person who's sannyasi or, you know, somebody who's very senior like that passes away, then certainly their passing away is glorious. But if you see in some sense, you know, in India, so many common people also, many simple women, people, you know, when they die so wonderfully. So just like recently I heard about so many stories of, you know, ladies passing away. There was one lady, it seems, she told her husband that she was from a business family. So she was known to one of our devotees in Mumbai. So she told her family that I will pass away on a Sunday, so that आप लोग को मुश्किल नहीं होना चाहिए. नहीं तो मैं वीकडे पे मैं चली जाऊंगी तो सब दुकान बंद करना पड़ेगा, फैक्ट्री बंद करना पड़ेगा, आप सबको बहुत परेशानी होगी. अगर मैं संडे चली जाऊंगी तो फिर किसी को भी तकलीफ नहीं होगा. And she was saying it seems that actually he passed away on a Sunday. You know, so a yogi or a karma yogi, any type of yogi, if you see, who has adjusted his vision properly. So, you know, some devotees were telling me about this. You know, in our Bombay congregation, there is this Mahaprabhu. I don't know whether you know. He's a very big lawyer and very close to Maharaj. Yeah, his wife, when she passed away, couple of years back, she passed away. So it seems she was like, you know, very elderly lady. And it seems when she was just passing away, 2-3 days before she passed away, her granddaughter's wedding was there in America. America में उसकी granddaughter की wedding हो रही थी. So basically she had to sit on Skype. So it seems she was in Bhaktivedanta hospital. So she told the doctors and she put on nice clothes. मतलब अच्छा साड़ी वारी पहन के, ornament, सच दच के बैठी थी computer के सामने. And she witnessed the marriage. She blessed the couple. And then after the marriage, immediately she closed everything and removed all the sari and everything also. And she went back to her hospital dress. And many of our brahmacharis from temple, it seems, Chowpatty temple, had gone to meet her. And it seems she was telling them that, "Mere ko abhi kuch bhi aa sakti nahi. I'm so happy that I'm going right now." You know, many people like that. You know, this Murlidhar Prabhu's, I think, mother-in-law, Kirtida Mataji, when she passed away also, she passed away with such a feeling of gratitude कि घर में सब अच्छा है, now I'm ready to go. You know, whenever she met any devotee, she would say that मैं अभी जाने के लिए तैयार हूँ. This is actually what is called as die before you die. That means the objective reality of death is there, and when that is at your doorstep, then you don't fight it out too much. मतलब अभी आ गया ना अंदर, ठीक है, जब तक आया नहीं आप फाइट करोगे, लेकिन एक बार अंदर आ गया तो आप अभी now you adjust yourself. अभी आपका subjective reality बदलो. Now you accept that death, and in that acceptance, you will feel very comfortable within your mind, and you're ready to walk beyond it. So this is actually how everybody in India passes away. I mean, even simple people, not just some sannyasi or spiritual masters, even simple people in India are supposed to. I mean, the Swarup Damodar Prabhu, I don't know whether you know him, he's a very good singer. जानते हो क्या उनको? Is Swarup Damodar Prabhu, very good. Shiksha Ashtakam Prabhu, the two brothers are there. So his father or uncle it was, he would tell us that it seems this fellow was, he was in Rajasthan somewhere, and he was going in an auto. He was an elderly gentleman going in an auto, and suddenly he felt he has got a heart attack. So it seems he told the auto wala to stop at the side. He got down from the auto, sat on the road. He had Ganga Jal in his body, in his bag. He drank the Ganga Jal, and he told that auto wala also, मैं अभी जा रहा हूँ, आप मेरा body को मेरे घर पहुंचा दो वापस, because he was going in an auto. And then he just sat on the roadside. This auto wala told the family later that he sat on the roadside, drank Ganga Jal, Bhagwan Vishnu का स्मरण किया, देह छोड़ दिया. So, I mean, you have so many, actually, because why it is said that is, because, it is said that when death comes, na, अपना body में ऐसा symptom आता है, आदमी को पता चलता है मैं मरने वाला हूँ करके. On the other hand, ये western world में, I mean, I heard this graphic example, मैं कभी भूलूंगा नहीं है. ये अमेरिका में, न्यूयॉर्क में, there is this Wall Street, na, New York Wall Street. So 1 year back, it seems there was this, ये कोई तो बैंक था, स्टैंडर्ड चार्टर्ड, आई डोंट नो, वन वेरी बिग बैंक इन न्यूयॉर्क सिटी. तो उसमें एक चाइनीज लेडी मर गई हार्ट अटैक में काम करते करते, और इट सीम्स 1 या 2 दिन उनके को-वर्कर्स को भी नहीं समझा कि ये मरी हुई है करके. That means people were coming in the office and going, and nobody knew only that she's dead. I mean, after 1 day or something, the stink started coming, so everybody knew that she's fallen dead in her cubicle. What it basically shows is you are so diverse from your own reality. Diverse मतलब तलाक हो गया तुम्हारे खुद के reality से कि you don't even know that you are about to die. I mean, you are this 35-40-year-old lady, and even others around, nobody bothers or understands the fact that someone is dying here. So for such people who are not ready to quit the body, that death is like the cat coming to the rat. That is their subjective vision. उनका vision वैसा है, because death ने सब program बंद कर दिया ना, चौपट कर दिया. So that's a classic example by Prabhupada, which talks about our subjective and objective reality. Thank you, Udhavanand Prabhu, for bringing that out.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Prabhuji,
Yeah,
actually, one more question I was having. If we see into scriptures, like passing away of great devotee, for example, Vritrasur or Ajamil, or even Bhishma Pitama, it is described in scriptures like people, they could see the soul going and then going back to Godhead.
Yeah.
So how people were able to see that? I mean,
I think that most of the time when they're saying like that, it refers to heavenly vision, divya vision. It doesn't refer to ordinary vision. So if you see, at least in Vritrasur's case, all the devatas were there around. Even Bhishma Pitama was passing away, all devatas, kinnaras, gandharvas, everybody had come. The whole universe had come to say goodbye to him. So, right, so a very collective kind of send off. So in such cases, all these great personalities, they can see, na? They have that special vision. Narada Muni, all these people are around, so they know that something like that is happening. I think, but that is not. Yeah, but for ordinary humans, it's never like that. Actually, I mean, one doesn't see like that. Yeah.
Okay. Because my question was like, if such a great occurrence happens, then is there any physical manifestation also for that? For example, I have read in one of the scripture that if someone goes to hellish planet, then he leaves the body from the anus opening of the body.
Correct.
And then from there he goes to hell. So because of that force, dirt which is present in the body in form of stool that comes out, and that is a proof that he has gone to hell. So there is a physical manifestation of this occurrence. But
I've heard that.
Goes back
but I agree with you. I've heard like that. I've heard that the soul can pass through any of the 9 gates, and when it passes through the lower gates, it goes to a hellish condition. And when it passes through a lower gates, then stool and urine is also emitted by the body. I understood. I mean, you're right. But I don't think generally we. Yeah, I agree with it. I mean, that part is mentioned. Yeah, what you're saying is objectively correct. Yeah, that is there.
Yes. Yeah. So similarly, if someone goes for higher destination, is there any symptom like? Because I have never read about
it. If it is the point is the Shastra, what you're quoting, it says that if one exits the body through the upper gates, that means either through the eyes, through the nose, through the ears, through the mouth, or through the Brahmarandra, the tip of your head. वो भगवत गीता में वो picture है ना वैसा. Then you go to the higher destination. So generally it is like that. But I don't think, I don't think we should go so much for that pratyaksha praman here, because that may or may not be there. So basically we don't analyze that too much. As in, some sannyasi has passed away, we don't try to understand kidhar se gaye, or because it's not possible to understand that also many times. I think, see, ultimately we just look at what the person has done through whole life. Now if we see Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he passed away externally in a comatose condition, correct? मतलब कोमा में था ना उनका बॉडी, मतलब काफी दिन तक, तो लास्ट के दिन तक he was not conscious like that. But I would say, all these things doesn't matter at all, because the thing is, it is a person's life that is important. आपने 75 साल में क्या किया वो इतना important हो जाता है. अभी आप कैसे गए वो उतना नहीं है focus. Because see, that is where we understand na कि Krishna will take care of the rest, right? Krishna says na that I will take care of whatever is lacking, right? वो क्या 9.22 भगवत गीता, आप आपका करो, फिर I will protect what you have and provide what you lack. तो उस समय somebody is not conscious, somebody is coma, ऐसा होता है रहता है. But I think we don't go so much by those things in terms of how a person is. Yeah.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Thank you
Hare
very much,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Hare Bol.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you everybody. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur
Hare
Bhaktivinoda ki jai.